33. The Yolk's on you.
No, it's not. So this episode is an interesting one, especially for me. As you guys are probably aware, I am not all that familiar with Super Sentai. I don't know a whole lot about the storylines. That's really more your area of expertise than mine.
I've seen Judanger, yeah.
And yet, despite that, I was able to pick up through context clues almost exactly what the original Super Sentai version of this story was.
Yeah, we'll get to that, but as far as Power Rangers go, it's a talent show at the youth center.
One of many that they've had throughout the show.
Mm-hmm. Bulk and Skull are behind stage looking for eggs for some reason, but then he finds a guitar. Bulk's guitar.
Yeah, it's weird. Bulk and Skull felt like they were in this episode more because they had to be, because it's a Power Rangers episode and you need Bulk and Skull.
Bulk and Skull been in more episodes than any Ranger.
Exactly. So it felt more like they were in this episode because you needed to have them in it, but they didn't even really do anything, you know? They just sort of... They did their own stuff.
Well, Skull banged the cymbals and knocked the principal's toupee off.
Right.
That was so 90s.
Right. And, I mean, ultimately, it's nothing offensive. It's nothing awful. It's just sort of a note that this wasn't Bulk and Skull's episode.
What happens? Tommy and Jason are going to do karate as their talent, and we kind of had a debate if karate's a talent or a skill, but it's kind of both, so whatever.
You know, speaking as someone who's been to talent shows and done similar, not quite martial arts, but things that are more skills than talents.
Well, I guess it's the sports argument. You can practice, but there's always a bit of natural talent, and heck, I couldn't do that, so whatever.
Right.
But they forget their belts, which Jason doesn't think is a big deal. Tommy does, so he rushes off to go get them, and that's how they get rid of him for the episode.
And it's quite literally within the first 30 seconds of the episode. So, literally, it's, hi, Tommy. Bye, Tommy.
Yeah. This is the last episode where we'll get an excuse like that. We'll get to that later. But we actually get some stock footage of Finster's workshop, because the monster of the week is not actually a Dora monster in Super Sentai. It was just a creature that they take advantage of, but they recut it to look like one of their creations.
Which I guess makes sense when you then remember that within the world of Power Rangers, it's just supposed to be our normal world. So we don't normally have giant fish monsters running around Southern California.
I mean, I haven't been to Cali since 2018, but I'm pretty sure I didn't see a monster.
Right, so I guess it makes a bit of sense why they could not include that storyline.
Well, Rita's like, I didn't authorize that, but it's my birthday, so Finster must have sent that as my present.
Never brought up again.
Your boss's birthday, you don't get excited for it, you pretend to.
Right, but I could pick up on context clues, more or less what this episode was supposed to be in Super Sentai.
Well, speaking of which, yeah.
In this episode, the whole point is that, Goldar, the pig monster, Squat, and
Babu,
they find this nest of eggs.
Two eggs.
And they eat them. And right as they finish eating them, the fish monster comes up. And he is clearly supposed to be super upset, and also very clearly was supposed to be female. So, looking at the design, it very clearly they're supposed to be a female.
Yeah. And also, in the Sentai, that monster didn't talk, which is why the mouth doesn't really move when it's talking in ours.
Right, which it's weird that they also gave it a weird,
oh, my lord, you eaten it!
Well, it sounded like a vaguely Mexican accent. Vaguely. Like terrible, reductive Mexican accent.
I didn't know about that. To me, it sounded more like just somebody trying to sound sophisticated and not knowing what they're saying. Don't you know how hard it is to find these eggs?
I did not pick that one up at all.
Well, the footage was kind of shot out of order, but it worked out, I think.
Right, because in the original, again, once the mother's been, dealt with, then Rita comes in, promises to bring the eggs back to life if the monster goes and fights the Power Rangers.
Right. And for Tommy, they trap him in a net. The putties trap him in a net. And Zordon says he can handle himself, ignore him. That's why he's not there right away. That's our excuse this time.
He can handle himself. And to be fair, he does.
Yeah, but, would have just, blaster, bang. He's guarded by, 2 or 3 putties.
Yeah, quite literally, it's ridiculous. And that...
It's kind of funny, though.
Well, yeah, but, we saw what? Not even an episode or 2 before, he quite literally took on 5 putties by himself and a kid. And they still, and they just completely wiped it.
Not... the putties weren't going to win the fight. They grabbed his communicator, ran off. Tommy gives chase, and they got a net hidden under leaves.
Yeah.
Which I'll at least say it was pretty well camouflaged.
Yeah, that's fair. I just think it's... I could see the story that could have been there. Could have been really emotional.
The one we got...
tragic story.
The one we got, the monster's upset that it lost its lunch. And Rita does appear, promising to restore it. In the Sentai, those were the creature's eggs, like children. And they still show the scene where it's crying over the eggs, which is silly if it's just the lunch.
Right, but if it had been the actual, this had been some, legendary creature that lived in hiding or had just woken up,
that would have been a lot of lore dumping to just throw in at this point in the series, though.
True. Except they could have skipped some up. They didn't need the Bulk and Skull scene. They didn't really need the talent show.
They had to have some human story arc.
Fair, I guess. But,
the Ranger fight, they do show up and fight the monster. Then it runs off. Rita promises to restore it. In the stock footage, the 2 eggs, there's a third one that's still intact that the kid's fine, and the Rangers spend the whole time pleading with it not to attack them and take their egg, but at this point it's warped. Then Burai shows up and helps fight, giving Geki a speech saying, "You can't let emotion stop you from justice, because he won't always be around." In Power Rangers, Jason's not like that.
Yeah, in this one it's basically just come on, ugly, I'm gonna punch you in the face. Jason does not have much in the way of emotional depth.
Well, not yet. He gets a really emotional scene in season 2, but...
Oh, sure, yeah.
But later, but this one, there was no reason to be. It was, in his mind, just a monster. They didn't even know about the eggs.
Right, and I think we also have to remember that fundamentally, this was not the first Super Sentai. This was,
The 16th?
The 16th. So there was already in Japan unestablished, lore, methodology, the way of doing things with a Sentai. Here, this is, season 1 of the Power Rangers. They're laying new ground with every episode.
Also, we're watching this as 30-somethings. If we watched it as kids, I don't think we would have picked up on the context so clearly.
Fair enough. And I think that is important to remember that this is fundamentally... This is back in the 90s where there was distinctly children's media rather than family-oriented media. Power Rangers is a children's show, not a family show.
This episode made us overthink a lot, but as far as it goes, it's okay. It's enjoyable.
Yeah.
And after they do destroy the monster with Ultra Sword again, because nothing can stop that thing... They go back to the talent show. Jason tells Zordon on his communicator they won for some reason.
More phenomenal. They're using that damn phrase again.
I don't remember them saying that.
Oh, no. I distinctly remember Zach going, it was more phenomenal or something like that.
Yeah, that catchphrase, they haven't given up on it yet. That didn't stick. What did stick was, it's morphin' time and back to action.
Mm-hmm. Which, fair. Morphin' time is fine.
It's classic.
Yeah.
Talent show, yep. Tommy and Jason do their thing. They flip some kicks and break wood with their hands, and that's all real. That was that. Back here, it was actually required to be martial artists to be a ranger. That's what modern seasons are missing.
Yep. And then there was Bulk and Skull, who
They had a band.
they did a band, and it wasn't terrible. Like,
For high school standards, and it was clearly something they threw together.
right, but like they had the enthusiasm, and it reminded me a lot of back when I started in band. Back at school, we always had this concert that was referred to as the concert only a mother could love. And it was always the first concert you ever performed whilst in the band. And it's everyone acknowledges that you're terrible. Everyone knows that you're terrible, but your mom's still happy that you're playing and you're performing. So it's the concert only a mother can love.
Well, Bulk and Skull don't really hurt anyone, except the principal with the symbols. They also don't get pranked this episode.
Right, they don't get pranked. Nothing bad really happens.
I mean, they don't impress the audience, but they're not booing. They're just kind of giggling, and Kimberly gives them a soft...
a pity clap, which, again, is fine. Like, Bulk and Skull have done nothing to warrant, punishment, so they don't get punishment.
Mm-hmm.
Which I have to appreciate, because in a lot of other stories, they would get punished just because they're Bulk and Skull. And I like that they didn't do that. They could have done that, they didn't.
That was the last silly Green Ranger episode, because the next one is the two-parter, The Green Candle. But, okay. And there's Joe's famous hair reveal.
I have hair.
I know, I was doing like a parody of the face reveal from people who already shown it.
Fine, yeah.
Well, this episode, solid 3. It's kind of a theme these last few episodes. It was okay, could have been better, but not bad.
I think I'd put mine closer to a 2.
Ooh.
I think I spent most of my time thinking about what it could have been, that I didn't really get a chance to, zone in or focus in on what was. It was so standard that I was left constantly thinking about what it could have been.
Well, Mighty Morphin standards are still fun to watch. Still had a good Megazord fight. Still got to see some martial arts, and Bulk and Skull, they love to perform. The actors love to perform. They said that in panels. They were getting paid pitifully, but they just really wanted to perform.
Right. And like, I appreciate Bulk and Skull in this episode, and that they were a bit of lightheartedness.
Well,
although I think that lightheartedness would have worked a lot better, again, if the story was slightly more dramatic.
yeah, at this point, they really weren't going for drama, but they'll tackle that, especially once Lord Zed comes around.
Right, and
For now, we've got, 7-ish more episodes of original stock footage. Then we get to Ju 2. Brand new stock footage filmed in Japan by Toei specifically for Power Rangers, which only time that's ever happened, actually.
So it definitely should be interesting. It's gonna be a treat, especially once they get more once they're no longer limited by the stock footage.
I mean, they still kind of are.
Well,
Even if they're not, fun fact, the show at this point was making $1 billion. Not 10% of that trickled down. They were still not investing much into it because they were cheap. But
right, but I mean, again, at the same point, once you have them building stock footage, it'll feel less like they're struggling to make the footage fit, and more they have footage that does fit.
Well, at least until Die Rangers, where they only use Zord stock footage.
Yeah.
And White Ranger. But for now, thanks for watching. If you did. If you didn't, then how do you know I said that?
Alright. Well, we'll see you guys next time when we take a look at the 2-parter, The Green Candle.
Will it make Joe cry? Will it make anyone cry? The candle is a nice reference to the Sentai synth footage. I'll explain that next time. Till then, bye.
See you guys.
Emerald Ranger.